Hello, everybody, and welcome into Senior Living Live. Our webinar today is called Building Resilience During Challenging Times. My name is Melissa. We thank you so much for being with us here this afternoon for this webinar that we expect to last about an hour. We are very excited to introduce you to our guest presenter, Mary Catherine Lundquist. She has some excellent tips to help you and your family weather some of the most difficult life events that you will face. Now, we want all of you to be a part of the discussion, and an easy way to do that is to scroll down to the bottom of your screen where it says Q&A. Feel free to type your questions out there. You can also do that in the chat box. Now, all video and audio lines will be muted for our guest viewers, so that is the best way to get your questions into Mary Catherine Lundquist, and I will be happy to read those at the end of her presentation. Mary Catherine, it is wonderful to have you here today. I'm really looking forward to this webinar. The floor is all yours.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. I am so happy to be here today with you and all of our friends who are joining us virtually. Thank you, everyone, for taking some time out of your busy day to think about how you can be stronger in your life, considering all the challenges that you are facing. I have some great content for us to cover here today, and it all comes from experiences and the research that we've done at Rutgers University. So I work at the COPSA Institute for Alzheimer's disease and related disorders, and we've been around for about 50 years providing supports for individuals who have memory loss, older adults, and also the people who support them, both their family caregivers and also their professional caregivers. So, and if you're supporting someone who is aging, all the complex needs that can arise as the person ages. Not only do they go through things that are stressful for them, but as caregivers, we go through a lot of stressful things as well. So that's why it is important for us to stop and to take stock of how we're doing, to think about what's going well and to think about what we might want to improve on so we can stay stronger. Oftentimes we feel guilty about taking time for ourselves to help ourselves be well, but not only is that good for us, it's also good for the people who we support as well, because the stronger we are, the healthier we are, the better the people who we support, the better they're going to be able to fare too as they face the illnesses and the other challenges that they are facing. So all these tips that we are talking about here today in this webinar are things that we, the staff at Rutgers, do, and we share these with our caregivers as well. So thank you everybody for being here and being open as well. So I will ask questions throughout, and I definitely welcome you to type in chat any responses that you do have. The whole point of this is for us to kind of think about how can these things that I'm going to share with you based on the current research, how can I apply these to my life? So I really invite you to take advantage of this opportunity and to think about your own life and how this material applies to you as well. So use chat. If you're calling in from your telephone and you don't have access to chat, you can also get a piece of paper and put that right by wherever you're listening or wherever you're watching this here today. Get a pencil, a pen, and you can jot some things down. When I ask you questions, when we go over certain slides, I might ask you a question. Feel free to jot that down on your piece of paper. So then later when we do have a question and answer period, you can definitely bring that up. Or it's also good for you to go back and to look at that because it'll spur your thinking as you think about the content today as well. So don't worry about writing anything down that I am talking about because you are going to have a nice handout. I sent that to our friends Janae and Melissa, and after this session they will send you the handout via email, which nicely summarizes everything that we have talked about here today. So don't worry about that. So let's get started. So now we all know we're going to have challenging times in life, right? Whether it be related to an illness that we have ourselves, or maybe an illness that we see our loved one enduring as well. There's other hardships that we deal with as well. We've all been in this in the past 2.5 years, right? With the recent pandemic, so many layers of hardships that everyone has been experiencing, right? And when we go through these hardships, we really have changes that happen in our lives, right? These challenging situations can bring anxiety for us. It can bring definitely stress. Look at all the social isolation that everybody kind of faced, right? And kind of the negative impacts of that for our lives as well. Many of us can have changes in our habits and our routines based on global things that can be going on, or other illnesses or other hardships that we're facing in our lives as well. So when we experiencing these things, we can really start to feel challenged on many different levels, physically, emotionally, mentally, and even financially. There can be impacts that challenge us as well. So even though we're going through all of these hard times, we can still stop and we can focus on how we're doing and our own well-being. There are things that we can do to kind of increase our resilience and help us be able to bounce back in the face of ongoing stressors, and then maybe new stressors that we are going to encounter as well. Today, we're going to talk about some tools, we're going to talk about some skills, and I'm going to share with you some resources that you can use for your own personal life. And you can also share them with your friends and maybe even your coworkers as well. These are great things that we can all do anytime to help us stay resilient. So our learning objectives for today, we are hoping that by the end of our time here today, you're going to be able to recognize factors that cause stress. You'll be able to identify the self-care skills in a resiliency toolkit that we're going to go over together. And that this is so important at the end here, that you are going to be able to start to develop a short-term self-care plan for yourself. And this will be the opportunity for you to think about how all these resources that we're sharing apply to your own personal life. We know that we all have different circumstances, right? Some of us might be caring for one person here, maybe a parent or maybe a spouse who's having some complex needs. Some of us might be caring for multiple people. Maybe we're caring for parents, and we're caring for young children, and we're working jobs as well. So everybody's situation is going to be different. So the skills that we're going to share are going to help you no matter what your situation is. So I'd like to start off here, and everybody who is joining us, if you just want to take a second and share with us in chat, who are you supporting? And you can put their name if you want to, or you can let us know, is it a parent? Is it a spouse, a sibling, a friend? Maybe there are multiple people who you are supporting, but type in chat and let us know, who are you supporting? And for many of us, the supporting goes on for years, right? Some of us maybe supported, one parent, and then the other parent also developed some complications as well. So sometimes the caregiving can continue for years and years. Sometimes when we're supporting someone can get better, right? They might have a short-term illness and then they improve with that. But then there might be someone else in our family who develops another illness, and we are supporting them for that as well. So anybody want to share with us in chat, anyone who you are supporting? We would love to hear about that. And while you are typing in there, we will keep going here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about resilience. What is resilience? So resilience, in a very simple form, is our ability to bounce back. Think about the rubber bands, right? We have a picture here of the rubber bands all in a ball. When we pull the rubber band, it goes out, but then when we let go, it's able to go back to what its original shape was. So there is some flexibility in that. So resilience is our ability to bounce back from a tough experience or a traumatic situation. This requires a strong foundation and also some flexibility. So healthy elastic bands stretch and recover their shape. Overused elastic bands become unhealthy, and they can break easily when they are stressed too much. Having good self-care practices can help us maintain the strength that we need to face stressful situations so we can bounce back in the future. So stressors, let's talk about stressors. We all experience stress, right? Throughout our lives, it's just a normal part of being human. So stressors are situations or events that feel threatening, dangerous, or overwhelming. Stress is different. Stress is how we react to the stressors mentally, emotionally, and physically. Now, commonly people experience stress as maybe tension or strain or feeling upset in some way. Stress is often an indication to us that the demands we are experiencing are greater than the resources that we currently have. So, for example, if you're faced with a situation or expectation that you believe you can't handle because you don't have enough time, money, energy, or patience, chances are you're going to feel stressed. Now, we can't always avoid stressors, right? These are things that just happen. But like the stressors we experienced with the pandemic, right? There wasn't anything that we could do about that. Or with a loved one who has an illness that's getting worse. We can not oftentimes control that illness, but we can do something about how we react to those events, those situations, and those people in your life. So let's take a moment and let's check in with our friends who are here. If anybody wants to type in chat, what is something that is stressing for you now? You can type in chat if anybody wants to share. Or if you're home and you're listening and you have a piece of paper there with you, write down on that piece of paper, what is it that is a stressor for you right now? It's probably different for all of us. We might have some things that we share, but it could be different for all of us as well. Yes, I will also offer, we'll be able to chat more in the Q&A. We are going to have 10 to 15 minutes at the end of this session where we will have questions and answers as well. But in the meantime, I'd love to hear anything that anybody is sharing. Take a look. Where, Melissa, I might need help finding the Q&A here. I'm in the chat. Oh, here, I got it. Sorry. Thanks, everybody. I got it. Oh, I care for my significant other who is 92 with dementia. Thank you for sharing that with us. So we all know someone's aging and they have memory loss too. That's very difficult, right? And a mother, thank you for sharing that as well. And then we have a friend, my chat is not available. Hopefully the questions and answers work for you too. But if anybody wants to type in for us a current stressor that they are experiencing, we would love to hear about that. Or if you're home and you want to write that down on your piece of paper, you can do that as well. So thank you everybody for thinking about that. And I have another question for you related to stress as well. How do you know when you are stressed? So for myself, I get a pain right here in my right shoulder. It gets really tight and then it goes up to the back of my neck. That's how I know I'm stressed. It's different for everybody. So how do you know when you're stressed? That's very important information for us to have about ourselves because we're so busy doing and doing and doing and taking care of everything that often we're not checking in with ourselves and that gets stored in our body somewhere. So anybody who wants to share with us how they know when they're stressed, we would love to hear about that. You can put that in the Q&A as well, or write that on your piece of paper at home. But learn your triggers, how you know when you are feeling stress in your life. Some people get a headache, right? Some people get really irritable and really cranky, short on patience, and they start to snap with people. It's different for all of us, right? So why is it important that we kind of talk about this, and why is it important that we check in with this? Because we want to be resilient, right? And research tells us there are actually, scientists who are researching this all the time, and they tell us that there are certain characteristics that contribute to resilience. And we're going to look at a few of those. We have some people who are sharing with us, juggling caring for my husband with dementia and grandson 7 months old. Wow, both ends of life there. So thank you for sharing that. Another stressor here, dealing with someone who cannot retain anything in memory, having to repeat and repeat 100%. If we could see each other, I would ask everybody, raise your hand if you can relate to what our friend just said there. That can be a constant stressor. So many things can stress us out when we are supporting someone who has memory loss, who can do less and less for themselves, right? And then stress, I feel annoyed and become short tempered. I think so many of us can relate to that. Thank you for sharing that with us, Helen, too. So yeah, all different things. We can relate to that. We all have the stressors. Why do we want to be resilient? So then we can manage these things and maybe not get short tempered with people, or maybe not have the pains that we get in our body from dealing with the stress as well. So there are 4 characteristics that are very important to maintain resilience in our lives. The first one is self-regulation. What is self-regulation? This goes back to kind of what Helen just said. We get short and we kind of snap at people. Sometimes when we're stressed, we lose our control over how we respond to situations. So self-regulation means that you can calm yourself and control your reaction rather than acting impulsively in ways that could be harmful. This includes the ability to check in with yourself so you know how you're feeling. If you don't recognize that you're stressed, you can't address that. So self-regulation means and we'll go back to the example that our friend shared here with us, when a family member asks you the same question 50 times in a 10-minute period, that by the end of the 10-minute period, you're not screaming at them, I told you that already 50 times. That's why self-regulation is important. It helps us check ourselves on many different levels. So that is the first characteristic. The second characteristic is social supports. Research tells us that having social supports and connecting with others can help us manage during challenging times. Having others who care about us gives us strength, and having others on our side and on our team, it gives us hope. Resilient people have strong social support networks. Now, we know if you're caring for someone who has memory loss, their world kind of shrinks, right? Maybe sometimes they're less able to go out and do things in groups. Even family events and functions can be a challenge for them. So that means if you're the caregiver, that maybe your world is shrinking too, because you're not getting out as much as you used to. Maybe you're not with friends. Maybe you're not able to go to your religious services and see your faith community either. So our social networks can kind of shrink as well. Very important for resilient people. What do? They maintain their social contacts. So let's all think about that, okay? We're going to circle back on that too later, and you're going to have a chance to say, how do I want to support my social contacts and actually increase those as well? So the third characteristic that resilient people share is that they have mental flexibility. And what does mental flexibility mean? It means that you can change your perspective, you can consider other options, and you can make choices rather than feeling trapped in a bad situation. So our friends who are here today, who are caring for someone who has memory loss, we know that we might have plan A, right? And how many times during the day do you have to go to plan B, C, D, E, F, and G? Right? Stop and think for yourself for a moment. You're probably being flexible all day long. Maybe mom doesn't want to get a bath today. You have to be maybe flexible in thinking about creative ways to encourage her to get that bath, right? Or you had a doctor's appointment planned for your dad, and all of a sudden, dad just doesn't want to budge. So we have to be flexible in order to help us manage all of the things which are constantly changing in our lives. So sometimes when things are changing rapidly, sometimes we get immobile, right? And we just kind of stop and then we're not doing anything. Resilient people don't become immobile, they're just become flexible. When they hit a roadblock, they're able to go and find another way as well. So that is the third thing that characteristic that's important for keeping people resilient. So our fourth characteristic that we have here is optimism and hope. Very important. Resilient people have a high level of optimism even in the face of very difficult circumstances. So this optimism fuels them and keeps them going. So optimism and hope, what is that? It's a deeply held belief that a bad situation is temporary and that there will be a better tomorrow. Having this hope can give you the courage and the can-do spirit so you can keep going. Now, this isn't necessarily related to any particular spiritual practice. Oftentimes people who do participate in spiritual traditions do derive a great sense of optimism and hope from that. But you don't have to be a part of the faith community or go to a church or subscribe, to any religious organization to tap into that optimism and that hope as well. So, and we probably all have that thing that we kind of hold on to that keeps us going. And then when we feel challenged, it can give us that little extra energy to keep going, even in the face of circumstances. So chances are that we are all resilient to a certain extent on these four things that we just reviewed: the social supports, optimism and hope, that we all have a little bit of all of these, but we can become stronger with practice. Maybe for some of us, we're weaker in some areas, and maybe for some of us, we're stronger in other areas. No need for us to worry, right? Because resilience is something that can be learned. This is good news, right? We're learning lots of things as we're caregivers, right? We're learning about benefits. We're learning about how to convince somebody to eat, or how to, what are the right products to kind of purchase to keep our loved one dry who might be experiencing incontinency. We're learning about the diseases that our loved ones have and different techniques to kind of keep them happy and keep them healthy and keep them safe. So, hey, we're learning all those things. Good news, research says we can learn these things too. So take heart in that. Just as when we practice with anything else, right, with any other hobby that we have or any other skill, we get better, so too it is with resilience. Research on resilience shows there are certain sets of skills that can contribute to resilience, and they can be strengthened. Today, we're going to talk about what some of these tools are that you can use going forward to help you stay resilient. So where do we start when we want to get better at something? We want to make sure we've got the right tools, right? So we're not going to develop all these in this short webinar. After all, it takes time to become a master at anything, right? If you want to be a builder, it takes time to become a master builder. But whether you're new to caregiving or you've been doing this for a long time, whether you're a professional caregiver or you are a family caregiver, we all need the right tools. So we have 4 tools that we think are really key, and these are all research-based that can help us stay strong and resilient. They are unplugging, practicing mindful self-compassion. Number 3 is engaging in positive thoughts. And number 4 is focusing on our relationships. These are all very simple things that you can be doing anytime or anywhere. So you don't have to go to another location. You don't need any special equipment. These are things that you have access to anytime, anywhere. And I'm going to explain that a little bit right now. So the first tool to help build resilience is to unplug. What does this mean? For us, it has 2 components. It means just to stop and to pause And then also to take a breath. There is so much science behind this now. Just stopping and checking in with yourself. Even if we only do the first part of the unplugging, we can see some really positive benefits in our life. You've heard people talk about that. Like if your computer doesn't work, the TV doesn't work, what do they say? Unplug it, wait a minute, and plug it back in. Same thing for us as human beings. Unplugging ourselves and stopping can be an incredibly nourishing and rejuvenating activity for us to do. So pausing just means that you stop what you're doing and you focus your attention on your experience at that moment. You focus on your breath, your body sensations, and your emotional temperature. How am I feeling? Pausing is focusing on the present moment without judging what should or should not be happening. Taking a short break to pause can help you relax, regain a sense of control, and reduce your stress level. Remember earlier when we talked about stress, and I shared that, like, when I get stressed, I get this pain right here in my shoulder. When I pause and stop and check in to say, how am I doing and feeling? And just listen to what's going on for me, then I'll hear this screaming at me right here on my shoulder. And then I'll say, okay, it's time to unplug for a minute, to take that deep breath and to see how I'm feeling. What is it that's stressing me out? Pausing gives you the chance to be more self-aware so you can identify when you are stressed. The second part of unplugging is to breathe. And this means controlling your breath in a way that calms your body and your mind. If we practice the pausing and the breathing on a regular basis, it will be easier for us to calm ourselves when we're feeling tense and anxious. This can improve our self regulation that we talked about earlier and help with our impulse control as well. We're going to try to do a short pause and breathe practice together. What I love about this is that you don't have to put on your jogging shoes. You don't need a yoga mat. You don't need to get in your car and go somewhere or sign up for a class. We can all do this anytime or anywhere. Say, for instance, you are supporting your family member. They need help when they're going to the bathroom. Maybe you help them get onto the toilet, and then you go on the other side of the door. You give them a few minutes there. While you're waiting for them, you can stop and you can take that pause and you can take that breath. Or while you're maybe standing near their bedside while they're trying to get their socks on, and you want them to do that because you're kind of supporting their independence, you can stop and take that pause and take that breath. And that can be a very rejuvenating thing for you as well. Someone mentioned earlier when your family member asks you the same question over and over and over and over again. Somewhere in that period when they're asking that repetitive question, you can stop and take that pause and take that breath to check in with yourself. So let's everybody take a moment, and wherever you are, let's do a little pause and breathe together. So if you're sitting in a chair, just sit up straight in your chair. If you're standing, that's fine too. If you want to lie down, you can lie down and do this as well. The first thing is just to stop what you're doing and check in. Relax. Become aware of the feelings in your body. If it feels right, you can close your eyes. Focus on your breath. Notice the sensations of your breath coming in and going out. Focus on how your body feels. Notice what's different about how your body feels now. Next, we will add a breathing practice. Breathe slowly and deeply in and out through your nose. Notice that your belly comes out when you breathe in and goes in when you breathe out. Your upper chest stays still. Try this for a few breaths. Now begin to lengthen your exhale. Let your breath out more slowly and more completely. Make your out breath longer than your in breath. Don't force it, just let your breath flow. Keep breathing and relax. Breathe in and breathe out. Now slowly bring your attention back and open up your eyes. Let's take a moment and check in with everyone. How was your experience with the pause and breathe practice? How did you feel when we were done with that? We'll wait a moment here to see if anybody wants to share anything with us in our Q&A here. What was your experience of the pause and breathe? Did you feel any difference with when you started as opposed to when we finished that? I felt rested. Thank you for sharing that. So that's just a very quick way that we can all kind of participate in a pause and a breathe. Really, you can do that any place. You can do it anywhere. You can do it when you're in line at the store, when you're waiting to get gas and maybe getting stressed at how much your bill's going to be when you're filling up that gas tank, right? That's an opportunity for us to stop, to pause, to check in with ourselves, to let our breath flow in and out and focus on our breath. This is a tool that can help us build resilience in our lives. So think about your own life. Everybody stop and think about this. When might be a time that you can add a pause and breathe practice into your day? If anybody wants to share with us in the Q&A, we would love to hear when you think you might do a pause and breathe. If you're at home and you have your pencil and paper there, write on your pencil and paper, I'm going to try to do a pause and breathe and put down a certain time. Maybe it's before you go in to support your loved one, and that little check-in with yourself and that breath for you can kind of take you down a notch. So when you go in, things kind of go better with your interaction with them. So if anybody here is supporting a loved one who is living in a long-term care facility, we know that sometimes there's lots of stressors that are involved there, right? In kind of navigating care and advocating for a loved one who is living in another location. So maybe before you walk into that long-term care facility, you take that pause and you take that breath. Check in with yourself. Waiting on my husband to finish in the restroom in the morning. Right. Thank you for sharing that so much. So many of us here are probably waiting for our loved ones with memory loss to do things all day long, right? Sometimes we think those are wasted moments. We could be doing other things and we get frustrated, right? So, and we have another friend here saying, right, that's right. So maybe this is resonating with people. So when you have those moments, when you're waiting for someone to kind of process what you're saying or to carry through a simple action, or waiting for your loved one to eat, maybe some of us here are supporting a family member who takes forever to eat, right? And that can be frustrating too. So take that as an invitation to you to take a pause and a breath for yourself. So that's our first tool, pausing and breathing. Joe is sharing with us, I do this all the time. It doesn't help in dealing with my sister's nastiness and anger at me. Thank you for sharing that, because yeah, sometimes it's very difficult when other people are throwing, negative comments at us and being mean to us. It can be very, very difficult. So sometimes in situations like that, we need to be pulling in lots of tools, right? But, as long as you have your breath, and I forgot who said this, a very important person said this, but your breath is like your seatbelt in life. So as long as you have your breath, you have a seatbelt to kind of help to help you. So hold on to the pause, hold on to the breath, and let's talk about adding some other things into the toolbox as well to support you. So another thing that we can do is to practice mindful self-compassion. And what does this mean? Well, we've heard people talk about mindfulness, right? That it is a practice. Sometimes people talk about doing mindful meditation. So they set aside 5 minutes and they're just aware of what's going on. That's definitely one way to practice mindfulness. But mindfulness can also be a way that we carry ourselves in the world. It just simply means being present in the moment without judgment, not hashing over what happened earlier and not worrying about what will happen or what will not happen in the future. You may have heard the expression, be here now. This is all about finding the place of quietness within ourselves. We have to be the calm eye in the center of the storm, no matter what's going on around us, because people are going to sometimes be nasty to us when we're providing the care, right? Maybe they can't control it because of the brain illness that they're experiencing, right? So, but when we take that moment and we pause and we focus on our breath, we can also become mindful of the sounds around us, the sensations in our body, like the feeling of our clothes on our body or the chair underneath us. That can be a mindful moment. You can also tap into a mindful moment when you go about your daily routines and activities. You can focus your awareness as you walk, or maybe you've heard about people eating mindfully, or even if you're doing a chore when you're washing the dishes, just being aware of what the water feels like and what the soap feels like. If you're washing your hands at the sink, a mindful moment can be smelling the soap and feeling the warm water wash over your hands. When you take the clothes out of the dryer, feeling those warm towels as well on your hands, or seeing the sun or the moonlight coming through your window. Those are mindful moments. We need this attitude of mindfulness. That is the first step towards having self-compassion. That means kindness towards ourselves. Self-compassion is a special way of being kind to ourselves. So I have a wonderful picture. I love this picture I want to show you here. Is your mind full of things, or are you mindful? This picture kind of shows the difference between the two things here. And hey, if you're a caregiver, I'm sure all of us, if we could see everybody and I could ask you, wave your hand, raise your hand if you can feel the mindful on the left side of the screen here. We would probably all be waving both hands, right? Because there's so many things that we have to do, right? That our minds are full of all the tasks and responsibilities that we have to do. Mindful on the right-hand side here is different. It's just focusing on that one thing at that time. So very important part of self-compassion is that we are able to be present to what we're experiencing and just accept it for what it is. We're not judging it. We're not exaggerating what's going on. We're just noticing what's happening and we're accepting it. This can help us gain a sense of calm and a sense of awareness as well. So this is the second thing that we need to practice in order to help build our resilience. Mindful self-compassion for ourselves, just being aware of what is going on for us and offering ourselves kindness as well. The third tool that we can use, we have our friend is sharing with us, I have my husband and I look at nature out the window at hummingbirds to be mindful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's just beautiful, right? And that's a great thing to share because sometimes we can't leave our loved one home alone, right? So we can't go to the beach and maybe have a mindful moment there or go out with our friends to do stuff like that. So we have to find it where we are. And when we stop and pause and kind of tune in to what's going on around us, we might be able to have that mindful moment that can really be a positive experience for us. So thank you so much for sharing that with us as well. So the third thing that we can do, the tool that we can use is based on, I wanted to ask a question if anybody wants to share here too. What is one way that you can offer yourself some compassion? Oftentimes we beat ourselves up as caregivers, right? That we're not doing everything right. When things don't work out, we kind of blame ourselves. So very important for us to have compassion on ourselves as well. So, and if you're home and you don't have access to the questions and answers, write down on your piece of paper, what's one way that you can offer yourself self-compassion? And we would love to hear about that at the end as well. So one way that we can help ourselves with self-compassion is to pay attention to our thoughts and to feed ourselves some positive thoughts as well. So it's natural for us to dwell on the negative. And when you're a caregiver, we know there's a lot of negative that's being thrown at us, right? But staying focused on the present can be hard because we think about the things that we did and we kind of second guess ourselves. And hey, there's a lot of things to worry about as far as the future goes, right? So it can be helpful to replace our negative thoughts with positive thoughts. This can help change our perspective and can help us be more resilient. So one way to do this is a great way, is to think about, we have a friend sharing with us, ice cream helps, good tasting compassion. Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. I agree with you on that. Giving ourselves the nourishment that we need, those things that feel good for us, those treats, that's offering ourselves compassion as well. So thank you for sharing that. So in addition to doing those things, we also want to pay attention to our thoughts and offer ourselves positive thoughts. One way to do this is to remind yourself of your personal strengths, something you did well recently. Maybe you stayed patient in a difficult situation, or maybe you made someone laugh, or maybe you were able to make yourself a nice meal. So before you go to bed at night, try this sometime. When you put your head on the pillow, stop to think about what your strengths are. What are a few things that you did well that day? That's one way to tap into positive strengths. Another way to tap into your positive strengths is to use affirmations. And affirmation is an uplifting and inspiring statement that you repeat to yourself throughout the day. So to get started, you might think of a positive affirmation to remind you of your strengths. They can start with things like I am, I can, I will. And here's an example of some affirmations. I will take a moment for myself. I can get through this, and I am strong. So coming up with your own personal affirmation and repeating that to yourself throughout the day when things aren't going well can help you stay resilient. Does anybody have a personal affirmation they would like to share with us in our Q&A? We'd love to hear that. So if anybody wants to type something in there, maybe you have an affirmation that you are using for yourself. Share that with us in chat, especially when we are feeling stress, maybe repeating that positive affirmation can really turn the situation around for us. And while we're waiting for if anybody's going to type anything in there, a second thing that we can do to increase positive thoughts for ourselves is to practice gratitude. Sometimes we have an overwhelming feeling of gratitude that just comes to us, right? But we can practice this. We can be intentional about being grateful. And this can really build our resilience as well. Sometimes people do this in the morning. I myself do this in the morning. When I wake up, I write in a journal and I write down 6 things that I'm grateful for. And that kind of really helps me set up my mind for positive thoughts for the day. And it helps me be more resilient. Maybe some people do something like that, here. Other people find that when they go to bed at night, they might write in a journal, 5 things that they're grateful for that happened. But we can also practice gratitude throughout the day as we are going along too. You know, maybe your loved one can't cook anymore like they used to, but maybe they're still able to help with the dishes, and that's a wonderful thing. So, oh, we have one of our friends who is saying that chat is disabled, so you can't input. I think you can type it into the Q&A. If you want to type it in there, I think we're going to be able to see your responses there. But please hold on, write down your thoughts, and I'm going to wrap up here in a few minutes, and we're going to open it up so you can share a little bit more too. So, but practicing gratitude, very, very important. I will get through this, I tell myself often. Thank you, Helen, for sharing that. That's a great affirmation. So repeating that to yourself over and over again can really help you be resilient during the day. I love that. Thank you. So it can be a passing thought, gratitude, or a conscious practice. Remember, we talked about the tools and that we have to practice using these. So it is with gratitude. Think about your life and when may be a time that you can practice more being grateful. That means forcing yourself to be grateful. You might start and say, I'm not feeling too grateful right now because everything's kind of crumbling. You stop and you challenge yourself. I'm going to write down 3 things that I'm grateful for right now. And you don't leave until you come up with those 3 things. You will find something, and that will fuel you to keep going for your day as well. So the 4th tool that we're going to talk about is relationships. Positive relationships are so important for all of us. There is more and more research about this. You know, having the right social relationships can even help us live longer. It can help build our immune system so we're stronger when we face things like the pandemic that is coming around, right? Relationships are important. So we need to focus on the value of our relationships. So being around other people, we can get hope too, because it is contagious. So think about your own life. Think about your relationships. Think about where you might want to build this up a little bit as well. Positive relationships support our physical health and they support our mental health as well. So there's a whole series of research studies that demonstrated that people who are isolated and lonely are more likely to catch a cold. So there is something about connecting with others that protects us in many ways. So think about this for your own life. And sometimes that means, you know, connecting with friends, connecting with family members, very, very important. If you're a caregiver, you might not be able to go out all the time and do that. So thinking virtually about how can I connect with someone, that's important too. Joining support groups. If you're not in a support group and you'd like to find out about a support group, you can definitely know me afterwards. Let me know afterwards or check in with Janae and Melissa about that too, so we can help you find support groups. Talking with other people going through the same thing that you are is very, very important. So we're going to check in with everybody here in a few minutes. And at that time, you can share with us how you've connected with someone recently. That's very, very important. And we also want to reach out and get help. That might mean that, you know, we might need to talk with a therapist. That's a great thing. Reaching out to get help is a sign of strength. It is not a weakness. People who can reach out and get help are more resilient. So we had the chance here to review 4 things. We talked about unplugging, pausing, and breathing. We talked about practicing mindful self-compassion, practicing positive thoughts through affirmations, thinking about our strengths and gratitude. And then we also briefly touched on relationships, the quality of our relationships. So as we're wrapping up here, I'd like to ask everybody to share one thing that you think you will take with you that we talked about today to help build your resilience. What of the things that we reviewed might you find helpful to build your resilience as you go forward? So you can type in the Q&A for us if you want to. But now I think I'm going to hand it over to Melissa, and I think she might open it up. So if people want to share that way, they can share that way too. Right before we get to that too, I just wanted to show you one more slide too. I'd love to hear your feedback on this session. So if you have a smartphone, you can point it at this QR code and it'll take you to a little 4-question survey. Let us know how the session was here today, or this link right here. You can copy that link and you can go fill out the survey as well. So your feedback is really important because it helps us improve our programming. But I'll hand it over to Melissa now so we can open up the Q&A, and I'd love to hear from everybody. Maybe you were writing things down on a piece of paper as we were going through this and I was asking you questions. What stood out for you and what might you like to try going forward to build your resilience?
That's a good question that everybody can start to think about and get at in the chat box if they want to ask you, or if they have any questions beyond that they'd like to ask you regarding this webinar. Mary Catherine Lundquist, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. And I actually jotted down something for myself, and it's the unplug, positive thoughts, mindful self-compassion, and relationships. And that's sort of the core to all this, right?
Right, definitely, and sometimes we might feel like we can kind of focus on relationships, and then other days we might feel like, I can't connect with people. So then I'm going to bombard myself with positive thoughts. And we have Helen sharing with us, I would like to work on my relationships. I think I unplug. Excellent, Helen. That's wonderful. Think positively and practice mindfulness. Wonderful. So yeah, and we did mention that earlier, that lots of people already are strong in some of these areas, right? So that's a moment to stop and pat yourself on the back and say, hey, I do have a lot of strengths. I am resilient. So you keep fostering those and keep feeding those. And like Helen mentioned, maybe she's going to focus a bit more on her relationships to kind of shore her up a bit. And Mary is sharing, I don't have a smartphone. Please email link for survey and additional resources. Thank you, Mary. I will send the survey link to Melissa and she can send that out to everybody afterwards. And then Melissa's also going to send you, we have a nice few page handout that summarizes everything that we talked about here today as well. So you can go over all these things as well. And we also have like beautiful self-care guides. I'll send Melissa my email or our website address. You can go onto our website and you can download the guides for free. And it's a nice little companion that will help support you doing the pause, the breathe, the mindful self-compassion, and all of those other good things as well.
Yeah, and Mary Catherine, if somebody doesn't want to wait for that, they want to get started today, can you just say the name of your website?
So certainly. It's www. Well, I guess it's not that. You've got to put those backsplashes things in, right? No, it's www.care, C-A-R-E, and then the number 2, and then caregivers.com. www. If you just put in care to caregiver, C-A-R-E, the number 2, and then caregivers.com, you should wind up at our website, and then you pick on the self-care page.
Self-care page. And what about some of these mindful like videos or audio clips that people can download on apps? I mean, there's so many apps that have that in terms of the mindfulness, and it can help you sleep. It can help you just sort of meditate. What do you think about those?
Right. I think they're great. I myself use Insight Timer every day, at least once a day. It's free, which is wonderful. And there are like hundreds of thousands of all types of meditations, reflections. There are talks. You can join courses. You can join like live meditations with other people. So, and it's not all like, just sit there and breathe for an hour. You could do a 2-minute meditation on anxiety. You could do a 5-minute guided meditation on grief. You could do something that's just geared towards overwhelm. You can type it in there. You can type in caregiver and you'll find little brief meditations, all based on whatever topic you put in there. So Insight Timer is great, and Calm, CALM, is another app as well. So the handout that you're going to get afterwards also has lots of good resources on the back. So it has all of our research on the back there. Everything that I've shared with you is research based. And you'll also see that there are other links that you can kind of click there as well to learn more and to practice more as well.
Yeah, you mentioned everything's research based. And can you just kind of dive in just a little bit more about your background, like where you started and how that got you here?
Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Well, I grew up in a household where we always had all of the elderly people who lived with us. So, I just lived with that my whole life. And goodness gracious, I just love aging and I love being with the older people. Not everybody does, but I kind of gravitate. I really see the wisdom, I see the joy, I see the beauty, and I'm really invested in making sure that people have a good quality of life, even if they do have a life limiting cognitive disorder that they will eventually die from. I want them to be well, I want them to be happy, and I want their caregivers to be happy too. So we used to have a day program at our university that was specific for memory impairment. So some of the best days of my life were in the adult day program, doing things with our friends who had memory loss. So just ideally love to be a part of a world where memory loss doesn't matter anymore. That we are all respected and we're all included and we're valued, regardless of what illness we might have.
Yeah, that's so important and not be forgotten, you know. I just don't forget that there's still somebody in there, right? And in that body that may be just a little broken. And so I am glad you mentioned that. One question here, what should you do if somebody needs additional help? Like, do you have any additional resources that can sort of bring home what you've provided us here today?
Oh, there are so many resources. It kind of depends on where you live.
Yeah.
So, if you're caring for an older person and a person who has memory issues, cognitive issues, or disabled for another reason, maybe there's a physical issue, it's always good to start in your county, the county where you live, at the Office on Aging. And every state is kind of a little bit different. We're here in New Jersey and we have what are called ADRCs, Aging Disability and Resource Centers. But in New Jersey, you call one number, 1-800 222-3737, and it'll take you right to the right Office on Aging for you. So it's probably like that in most other states. So you want to look at your county websites or go to your state websites first and type in your zip code, and it'll probably get you down to where your county is. And then you call your county and they can fill you in on resources that are available for your local area there. So if you're dealing with a particular disease, like if your loved one has Parkinson's disease, or if they have Alzheimer's disease, or frontal temporal lobe dementia, or Lewy body disease, there are disease-specific organizations that are national and also have regional chapters. So you would type in, frontal temporal lobe, put an association, and you'll probably come up with 2 or 3 associations that would support you there as well.
Excellent, excellent. I hope our viewers got that and we're jotting that down. And we'll of course send along all of the documents that Mary Catherine Lundquist will be providing us to give to you. Uh, any final thoughts, Mary Catherine, before we leave? You did an excellent job, and I know that this particular webinar had quite a bit of Q&A in the middle. So I think we did, or not Q&A as much perhaps as just joining in and giving their thoughts and just being a part of the conversation. But any parting thoughts you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Just for everyone to stop and to give themselves credit for everything that they are doing,
Yeah.
and to keep tallying your strengths and to keep offering yourselves positive encouragement as you go along. Caregiving, people have said, is the hardest job that you're ever going to do, but it's also the most rewarding thing as well. So you're here today, which means that you're reaching out to make contacts with people who can support you. So that is wonderful. That's another wonderful thing that you are doing to help you being resilient. So keep celebrating yourself.
I love it. I love it. And I think we had just one question that popped in, and it's from Helen. And Helen, we appreciate your participation today. You've been wonderful. She says, thank you for your help. I needed to hear this reinforcement. And that's what this is all about. Mary Catherine Lundquist, thank you so much for being our guest today. Wonderful presentation and wonderful information. And I think you're going to help a lot of people.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Be well, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And for all of you watching, another reminder that this webinar link, as well as all the documentation that Mary Catherine Lundquist is willing to share with everybody, will be available in the email you use to RSVP for this webinar starting tomorrow. So make sure you check your inbox. Also, if you like this particular webinar, head on over to our website. We've got lots more all about senior living over at www.seniorlivinglive.com. We thank you so much for being a part of our conversation here today. Have a great day, everybody.